All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to today's Comox Valley Regional District Board meeting. And as we always do, we'll begin with recognition of traditional territories. Just want to acknowledge today that we're meeting on the traditional territories of the Comox First Nation, the traditional keepers of this land. And moving to call to action number 86, media and reconciliation. We call upon Canadian journalism programs and media schools to require education for all students on the history of Aboriginal peoples, including the history and legacy of residential schools, the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples, treaties and Aboriginal rights, Indigenous law, and Aboriginal Crown relations. And moving to business, we have a recommendation for a closed meeting later on, if someone cares to move that. All right, thank you very much. Any questions on that? Anyone opposed? That carries unanimously. And next one up, we have adoption of minutes from January the 13th. Any questions on those? It's moved and seconded. I don't see any questions. Anyone opposed? And that carries, and we'll move straight into reports. And the first one is the Comox Valley Regional Climate Action Strategy. And I'll pass this over to our CAO, Warren.
Thank you, Chair, and good afternoon to the directors. I'd like to introduce Dylan Thiessen, our Planner 1 Long Range, and Robin Holm, our Manager of Long Range Planning and Sustainability, and they will be introducing the Comox Valley Regional Climate Action Strategy. Dylan, over to you.
Thank you very much for that introduction, James, through the CAO to the Chair and Directors. Robin and I are really excited to be here today to discuss the Comox Valley Regional Climate Action Strategy. It's something that's been in the works for quite some time. Direction for this work was first received in April 2023, when staff then presented the first Comox Valley community-wide GHG emissions inventory. Based on that presentation, the board directed staff to use the inventory findings to develop a climate action strategy that would help prioritize actions and guide future climate efforts across the region. In January 2024, work on the climate action strategy began in earnest with the first of two elected officials forums. The first EOF focused on hearing from elected officials and creating space for strategic discussion related to climate action. What staff heard at that EOF was a desire to be ambitious with the actions, to meaningfully involve youth in the process, and to prioritize actions that deliver co-benefits for the Comox Valley community. The resulting strategy takes a regional approach, recognizing the interconnected risk shared between jurisdictions, the regional nature of the community-wide emissions inventory, including its largest resulting emission sectors, and the regional focus of climate action within the regional growth strategy. But it is developed alongside multiple municipal climate action plans, which are recognized, and which the regional strategy is intended to complement and work in alignment with. The development of the strategy involved robust engagement with a wide range of organizations and local governments, including Comox First Nation, the CVRD, and municipal staff from member municipalities, as well as community partners such as Island Health, social service providers, the agricultural community, environmental groups, and local youth, among others. Engagement included focus sessions organized around each thematic action. The broader public was also engaged through surveys, including a youth-focused survey that was distributed to students at Lake Trail Community School and Isfeld Secondary School through their Eco Fair. And staff undertook a bit of a roadshow of the CAS across the CVRD, meeting multiple times with departments individually to review actions and timelines, ensure existing or ongoing work was captured, and to help prioritize and refine the final actions that made it into the strategy. While local governments have some regulatory tools available at their disposal to reduce emissions, such as accelerating the zero carbon step code or implementing waste hauler licensing, both of which are highlighted in the strategy, many emissions reduction actions ultimately depend on community behavioral change or need to be regulated by a higher level of government. This led to an acknowledgement that local governments, largely due to a lack of jurisdiction, but also due to constraints on resourcing and capacity, cannot themselves achieve the level of change required for net zero community emissions targets. As a result, while the actions in the strategy are aligned with provincial and federal climate targets for net zero emissions by 2050, Achieving this scale of emissions reduction will require leadership and regulation at senior government levels, underscoring the importance of doing the work that the CVRD can do within its control, while actively advocating for stronger climate action at provincial and federal levels. The strategy includes 70 actions, all developed to work towards and advance key objectives for the Comox Valley. In developing this strategy, staff focused on 3 complementary approaches. The first is to reduce community-wide GHG emissions through mitigative actions. As mentioned, while local governments have limited regulatory authority in this area, the strategy identifies actions that can be implemented locally and highlights the importance of partnering with and advocating to other levels of government to achieve meaningful emissions reductions. The second and third approaches are to strengthen community resilience and build capacity for adaptation efforts. This is much more squarely in the local government's sphere of influence, and its importance is heightened as we have seen provincial and federal governments back further away from this in recent years, relying further on local governments to undertake this work. This work is more difficult to track or monitor quantitatively relative to those mitigation efforts, and it's insufficient if pursued without measures to also reduce emissions. But these approaches will strengthen and protect residents, property, critical infrastructure, and natural systems against the impacts of climate change, including those we are already feeling. The second Elected Officials Forum, hosted in October 2024, highlighted the importance of this quite clearly, featuring a presentation from a speaker panel, including the Municipal Insurance Agency of BC's General Counsel and Chief Risk Officer, the Municipal Finance Authority of BC's Director of Sustainability, and Mayor Mike Gates, who was in office during 2021's catastrophic flooding. The importance of reducing risk through climate action that focuses on mitigation, adaptation, and resilience building was a key takeaway. The strategy's actions are organized into 8 thematic sessions, each of which includes a table that looks like the one on your screen. The tables outline the action, the time frame for the estimated initiation of that action, the department that will be leading the work, any partners, either internal to or external from the CVRD that have been identified, and a rationale for that action. In closing, the recommendation in staff's report is to approve the strategy and direct staff to implement actions as aligned with existing departmental work plans and the CVRD's current approved financial plan. Also, as part of next steps, staff anticipate provincial direction under the Emergency and Disaster Management Act to develop a disaster and climate change and resilience assessment for the region, which could then further help prioritize the next suite of priority actions. The strategy also commits the CVRD to annual reporting on the actions and progress made, challenges encountered, and plans for the next actions to be implemented. With that, I will turn it back over to James, and Robin and I are here to answer any questions you might have.
All right, thanks so much. I really appreciate all the work that went into it. It's a pleasure to finally be seeing it. So I'll turn this over to the room. Any questions, observations? They nail it completely on the first pass. Is that Director?
Thanks, Chair. I was pleased to see the report, and it's a wide-ranging set of actions. There was nothing like incredibly dramatic that you could grab onto right away, but I was glad to see a few elements. And just the one I'll highlight was reference to the Youth Climate Corps. And I think in particular that when we're doing this work, we need to bear in mind the generations to come who are feeling, I believe, the impact of what's going on more so. And I just wonder if any steps have been taken at the regional district level to endorse or facilitate the Youth Climate Corps' ongoing involvement in the Comox Valley. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Yeah, through the chair to the director. Not at this point. I will note that we do in this department regularly engage with your colleagues at the City of Courtenay. So we're aware of their experience with the Youth Climate Corps. The CVRD does still have some LGCAP funding to allocate. So our department and the organization as a whole will discuss what that looks like, and that's certainly a possibility that is open. And the climate action strategy, I should have mentioned in the presentation, we really designed it to be an iterative document and process, and we think the annual reporting will help with that. So the intent is certainly for it to be responsive to emerging trends or needs as they might arise. So that the Youth Climate Core or involving youth more directly is certainly an option on the table.
That's great to hear, and I would just echo what Director Lane said in terms of it speaks to the youth involvement piece that guided this whole thing. It'd be great to see youth delivering some of it. So I can see nods. So I think we're on a similar page. Director Brown.
And again, excellent segue. There was a few years ago a youth climate forum something, and I think that would be another really great way to keep youth engaged and also continue to learn with them and learn from them. And I'm not sure if it's mentioned specifically in here, but I would encourage us to continue to support that work. And if you guys have any comments around that or the potential of that, I'd love to hear that.
Through the CEO to and the chair to Director Brown, we have heard interest from the community in undertaking or essentially hosting I believe it was a youth climate conference. And I think it was just as recent as in the spring of 2025 that it was held. And so as a part of reporting out on how we plan to use the LGCAP funding, we are going to be bringing it forward as a package for EAC to consider. We will certainly be looking at climate outreach and education opportunities as a part of that. And we would be including that as a part of that, that proposal for the directors to consider.
Perfect, thank you.
Just in following up on that, I was at the one in 2020, like sort of the week before the pandemic, and then the following one in 2025. And I think outreach to the school district on that could be really productive. Anyway, so definitely in support of that. Dr. Harbour.
Yeah, thanks. I think at the ESC we gave some direction to staff to revisit the subsidies for say for heat pumps in recognition that the province and the federal governments have dropped it. But I think my comment at the meeting was I would like us to see real mitigation in communities. So between more soft kind of approach, I would love to see investment, for example, to help convert some of community halls to energy efficient spaces, and the rest of that, to me, that would have a higher value. So, but otherwise, I mean, this is a very comprehensive report that you've put forward. I'm just wondering, something that wasn't clear to me is it doesn't necessarily, as Dr. Hillian say, there's nothing like brutal about it. There's no, it's a plan, right? But I'm just wondering if if staff had considered other like kind of corporate policies that could be a little bit more hardened up around some of these targets, because I think I see a lot of actions, and a lot of these 70 actions will depend on priorities of the board at the time, and they'll all come back to us in isolation from each other. So I'm just wondering if there's an opportunity to consider strengthening, even though we already have a few policies, but strengthening policies that really locks in some of these strategies, or if it's been discussed among staff at all.
I don't see staff jumping in here. I think I could say that a couple of things on that. We have our corporate energy plan, of course, which has some overlap here. We also intend to come back on an annual basis to speak to the implementation of this action strategy, and that'll be an opportunity for you to see how they do connect together, so there won't be as much of an isolationist view of the different actions. And we can take the point about strengthening policy as we go along. So I think there's lots of opportunity to use this strategy on an annual basis to weave into the work that we do. And by reporting in a holistic way, we're coming to you in that broad sense, and we're not going to be trying not to be presenting things in a singular fashion or isolated fashion.
CAO and the chair to Director Arbor. There's also a section in the climate action strategy that speaks to actions specific to the CBRD as an organization, and that really is focused on how climate action is prioritized. And so in that section, there are a few actions directed towards how climate action as a lens can be taken well in like looking at projects and budgets and the prioritization of work plans. So if you look at the strategy, that specific section informs those sorts of policy development and even how the work plans are developed.
Do you have a follow-up?
Yeah, that was just good to hear. And I mean, on the mitigation side, to try to find still the places that will make the greatest difference. And on the adaptation side, the places that were most at risk, like those are pretty key criteria. And I guess part of my comment is just I appreciate once, for example, we have the REV purchasing policy, because then that's kind of locked in. And the problem with a plan like that, though it's excellent, is again, it's just the political winds of the times. And I've seen, like, we had a very detailed active transportation map, but now it's kind of flailing in the wind. So to me, the more we can embed some of those things that they don't come to the board table, the better it is. Thanks.
All right, thanks. We'll go Director Morin.
Great, thank you, Chair. Excuse me. Great looking report, and although there's lots of actions and you'd love to be able just to do them all right away, it's just great to see it laid out so well. In terms of the next, excuse me, in terms of the next steps, it's in the report, it says implementation will focus on actions that offer the greatest potential impact and value, which obviously makes sense, and then talks about aligning with the departmental work plans and things like that. Not to go into too much the conversation that we some things that have been brought up recently around food security. But I guess when I think about some of the actions or recommendations in the plan around food security as an example, I'm thinking about things that people kind of jump on board with in terms of the community, and they might not necessarily be the greatest potential impact, but they contribute to behavior change and attitudinal change in the community. So I'm using food security as an example because we saw during COVID more people growing food and things like there are these opportunities that we can latch onto. So I guess my curiosity is, when we say that we're going to focus on actions that have the most impact, which might not be about supporting people growing food or that kind of thing, but they contribute to the overall goal, I think, that we're trying to reach. So I guess I'm curious, curious what if those kinds of things will be considered in terms of just not necessarily the biggest bang for your buck, but things that are kind of lay a foundation for the kind of change that we want to see in the community overall.
Thank you. Yeah, through the chair to Director Morin. Appreciate that. I think, again, the annual reporting process will keep this at the top of mind, and we will be meeting with the individual departments. It's not just the long range planning department. Of course, it was overseeing this project that will be implementing all of the actions, thankfully. But having professionals in those places that will be working, like our agricultural planning coordinator that we now have full-time, that's someone who will be here to implement the Comox Valley Agricultural Plan, which there is a degree of overlap between these two strategies. So we would be working in concert with any or all affected CVRD departments, and including determining what they feel impact means, what is impactful to them in terms of the conversations they may be having with community organizations through their own work or through plans or strategies that they've been working on.
And I just a quick follow-up. I just love the emergency management piece of it, because it all ties in together with when we have these extreme weather events, and then we look at, food security in a neighborhood and how that works and how it can all sort of contribute to the greater good. Thanks.
All right, thanks very much, and go to Director Kerr.
Thanks, Chair, and thanks for the report and all the work that went into it. I guess my question's more long communication strategy with the public, and I know there was that feedback that was accepted going into the report. If I look at all of the things that the CVRD could do, like in-house, that would make a small difference in our community for the overall GHG emissions, right? But if that work can be done to then leverage and inspire the community to do more. So, just as an example, if we took all of our vehicles in the CVRD and turned them over to electric tomorrow, that's like a small percentage of the total number of vehicles in the CVRD. But if that was, broadcast and communicated and that success story was shown, then that might inspire others to do the same. And that's just like one little example. I think of our awesome board here in the lobby of the CVRD building, right? The GHG emission reduction, and that's like inspiring for the public that walk in and see that. So I guess the question is, how do we turn what we do here, the good work that's being done on a small scale in a big organization, to like an even bigger scale in the community?
Thank you. Through the chair to Director Kerr. I don't know if we have the exact answers to that, but that is definitely on the top of mind. I think the CVRD has demonstrated through the elected officials down to staff that we like to lead by example. And all I can let you know is that we are working with our communications department very closely, specifically relating to this strategy in terms of a public rollout of it and what that communication looks like, and anticipate that communications and public education will be part of that process as well.
Thanks, Chair. On the subject of communications and reporting, we did have a program before, I think it was last year, where we basically had an action that was announced on a regular basis of what was going on within the CVRD related to climate change. Did we do 52? Yeah. And I guess that was a one-year event. I'm sure it was a lot of work. But I thought we also had a scorecard that we had adopted a couple of years ago to show where we were progressing. And I'm just wondering if that's still in place. Has it been abandoned, or is there any possibility of resurrecting it in relation to this initiative?
Through the CA and the chair to Director Hillian, you read my mind, because that's exactly what I was going to put my mic on to say to you, that we can also use the RGS performance monitoring dashboard as an opportunity to highlight this strategy as well as the progress and actions that are being undertaken. It is with staff right now. We are planning on revamping it and maybe revisiting how information is being communicated. We're looking at exploring visual ways of sharing information. So this is certainly on our list of things to work on this year, and it certainly could be explored as a way to share more information and action on the strategy.
Great, thank you. And Director McCollum.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Reading this report reminded me of a previous discussion and some actions around a mode shift and active transportation. And I believe that where we left things was with some type of direction for exploring rebates for e-bikes. And please correct me if I'm wrong, because this is going back now, I think more than a year. We were maybe going to wait until the pilot project in Saanich had completed and been reviewed and studied, which it has, and that report's come out with a lot of really positive data in terms of how well mode shift is supported by that program and just how impactful it was. And I do think we have some outstanding direction in that department. It's not mentioned in the report. There is an action around ensuring that active transportation plans and projects that are developed to account for e-mobility modes of active transportation. And that was the only thing that I saw that was adjacent to it. And there are things in this action plan that call for expenditures, like adding a staff person to execute the plan. So I'm just wondering, is that work just kind of, I'd want to say fallen off, but just not rose to the top of the priority list? And is there a way to kind of bring that back into this discussion? Because it is, it's a pretty good impact for the cost in terms of GHG reductions and mode shift. And we do have data around that and a study published by UBC not very long ago. So it might be useful to return to that and put some energy into it.
Thanks, Director McCollum. I was going to say that the comment about the rebates for e-bikes is something we'd have to go back. It is a little while ago now that I think there was that board discussion around that. Fortunately, Mike Zabarski, our manager of transit and fleet, is here. So Mike, you jumped to the table. I'm sure you've got something to add that's more timely around that, but it might also be something we have to come back to the board with if there's something more in depth. But Mike, you've got something to add.
Yeah, through the CAO, the chair, we were awaiting a kind of second round of the provincial rebate. It was supposed to come out last year, and we did have some conversations with the province around providing a top up, like a municipal top up, which we've done with other like heat pump rebates, for example. We still have not seen the relaunch of that rebate program, and in the meantime, we've been focused on the electric bike share and electric scooter share program, and I think. As you said, James, we could come back with a kind of a follow-up report if there's interest to reopen that line of interest.
Just curious as to whether staff feel that a further resolution is required, because I think there was a resolution at that time, if I recall from that meeting, whether that can be acted upon or a fresh one is preferable.
Yeah, I think if the board wants that kind of direction here today, then sure, we'll take that and look for a motion to that effect.
Yeah, all right, we're on receipt, but that's something we can do in just a moment. I'm not seeing any further discussion, so perhaps we'll dispense with receipt. Anyone opposed? And that carries, and this recommendation. All right, thank you. Someone cares to second it? Thank you. All right, anyone opposed to the recommendation? And that carries. And Director McCollum, did you want to make a resolution? Please go ahead.
I hadn't really thought about a resolution. Yeah, just that the board directs staff to come back with an update on possible options for an e-bike rebate program. Is that general enough?
Any discussion on that? Not seeing any. Anyone opposed? And that carries. And thanks for bringing that back up to the top of the list, Dr. McCollum. All right, and Mike, looks like you'll probably be staying there. The next item is supportive transit fare program options. And I'll pass this over to our CAO to introduce.
Thank you very much. And yes, so there's a supportive transit fare program options report that Michelle Hébert, social planning coordinator, and Mike Zabarski, manager of transit and facilities, are here to present on. And I'm going to turn the microphone over to Michelle. Mike, thank you.
Michelle. Mike. Yes, thanks, James, through the CAO and the chair. Michelle and I are here to give a tag team presentation on the proposed supportive transit fare options. And we can advance the slide. Maybe. There we go. Okay, so as you recall, CBRD worked with BC Transit last year on a fare review. We now have the new fares in place as of January 1st, and those are shown on the right. In addition to those fares, there are some other provincial programs, such as the Children 12 and Under are free, and the BC Bus Pass program, which is an annual pass administered by the province. for low-income seniors who can purchase this annual pass for $45, and also persons with who are receiving disability assistance, they get access to that pass for free. And then the CBRD's passes that are already discounted through the concession fare. And that's for youth 13 to 19, North Island College students, and seniors that are 65 and over. So that's kind of our current fare landscape. And I'm going to pass it over to Michelle.
Through the chair to the directors. So Mike and I have had the opportunity to take a look at some of the suggestions from the transit fare review, and one of which is the ETAP program. This is the Emergency Transit Assistance Program, and it is developed and run by United Way. So it's actually fully administered by United Way. Currently in BC, there are about 9 different municipalities or regions that are utilizing this program. And the basics are that a certain amount of transit tokens, single ride or day pass tokens, are provided to United Way, and United Way really distributes them to community partners, service organizations, and they also handle all the applications from the service organizations. Once they're in the hands of the service organizations, of course, the service organizations then distribute them to their clients. So we took a look at that program. I had an opportunity to talk with Kamloops representatives who have been doing the program in some other regions, and we came up with a number, a cap that of about 5,000 single ride tokens per year that we are recommending. Decided on the concept of a cap as in a way to just make sure that things are smoothly running and that there weren't any issues. And then we can always review at the end of a period of distributing these tokens, how things are going, and adjust the amounts accordingly. But that single ride token of about 5,000 a year would go towards people in the community who especially need them for more frequent access, things like emergency needs, getting to and from a hospital. Obviously, if a ambulance wasn't needed, but employment, education, medical, dental, social or recreation, things getting to and from food banks, to and from shelters, and really helping to that segment of the population to be able to be supported in that way. So other communities in BC that are doing this are Cowichan Valley, Abbotsford, as I mentioned, Kelowna, Kamloops, and about a total of 9 others in BC so far. So that's the ETAP program that we discuss in the report. The second program we highlighted and bring to your attention, calling it the GO program. It's very similar to the CAMPASS program, which is Kamloops program. And this one's different in that CVRD would be administering it. It would provide a 50% discount on 30-day pass fares. In other words, UMO passes that go for 30 days, but that would extend for a period of 6 months for any individual that was accepted into that program, and it would allow for them to renew that 6-month over a period of another 6 months. And again, a cap of about 150 qualified residents who would be in the category of low income. So this one in particular is really 2 things. It's really more for people who would require a more frequent use of the transit system to get to and from work, to be able to, get assistance with things on a daily basis for transit. And the other piece of this is that we're really aiming for residents who fall within a gap, meaning there's already programs by BC Transit that help support seniors, for example, low-income seniors, people with differing abilities or that are on disability. Those programs that BC Transit offers provides a steeper discount than this program, the GO program, would do. However, we're really trying to help make sure that the people that fall under, like maybe they're not quite a senior yet, maybe they they're maybe in their late 50s, have just lost their job, maybe they're going to be giving up their car and need to do a transit program, and every little bit counts when someone's in that situation. So it's targeting, again, those that don't fall into the other programs. And what's nice about this is that we've been able to think of ways to make the application process for people a little bit easier. And currently we have the LEAP program through the recreation, and that's the Regional Joint Recreation Group. We've had some conversations with them, and the application that we already use, that also Comox, Courtney and Cumberland use for the discounted recreation programs, we could place this information on that same application, thereby giving access and ability for people with that application to see that there's several options for programs, one of which recreation and another for transit, all in the same application. So there's been those preliminary discussions, and so far, yeah, everyone is on board with that. So I'm going to hand it over back to Mike to discuss remaining things.
Okay, thanks. Okay, so there's the two programs that we're recommending. From a financial implications perspective, they differ. The ETAP program, we are giving away these tokens that are currently being purchased by a number of community groups. So the value and kind of lost revenue or reduced revenue is just over $12,000 for those 5,000 tickets. There's also an administration fee that would go to United Way, which is about 10% of the value of the tickets that they're distributing. And we're estimating about 50 hours of staff time at CVRD. The GO program, if everybody who was participating was also currently already purchasing an adult 30-day UMO pass at full fare, there would be about a $54,000 reduction in revenue. And we're estimating that would be about a 100 to 200 hour staff time allocation, because we're going to be administering that one in-house. So that's intaking applications, reviewing applications, getting these passes into the hands of the users. None of these are currently included in the financial plans that are posted. Depending on the board's direction today, we would be updating the 780 transit budget as part of the recommended final budget. And with that, Michelle and I are both here to answer questions.
All right, thanks very much. And I see a question from Director Brown. Go ahead.
Thanks so much for this and bringing back those. They look like really great programs. I have a question around the ETAP. I see that United Way is collecting an admin fee. Do they then report out to us on usage and demand and who's using them and that sort of information, which would be very valuable to us?
Through the chair to Director Brown. Yes, how it works is that there is an application that the organizations need to fill out to begin with. Then there's reporting requirements, both during the term, I believe, and also at the very end. So we, as staff, are able to see what's happening through those reports. And that's why I think we put minimal staff time of about 50 staff hours per year for us to be able to view what's happening. But the majority of that administration is done by the United Way, including them looking at the applications and making overall assessment on how many tokens should go to which organization. And yeah, that assists for us to be able to be removed from that in a good way, that we can just allow for that process to take form through United Way.
Okay, great. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I'll go to Director Morin.
Great, thanks, Chair. Well, I was really happy to see this. I think whatever we can do to alleviate the financial worries for people who most need it in the community is always a good thing. And really, in the grand scheme of things, I don't see it as a huge expense for the number of people that it would support. So in terms of the LEAP, if you qualify for the LEAP pass, then you would qualify for like it's the same criteria or income or whatever for both. So you don't have to have two different sort of sets of criteria if you're putting it all together in the same application.
Through the chair to Director Morin. So for the GO program, which is like the CAMPASS program, we're going to be using that LEAP application, which has the low income measure. And people would have to attest that, yes, I fall into this category. Yes, I do not already qualify for BC Transit, other discount programs. And the other program, the ETAP, would be slightly different because those passes would go to the organizations. And then from there, it's really the organizations that would have to kind of vet and decide, okay, who are these single ride passes going to go to, or these day passes going to go to? And it's very much allowing for them because they know their clients so well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, I should have specified. I was mostly talking about the Go Pass. Yeah, I'm quite familiar with those tickets, and I know a lot of people who have benefited from it. So, thanks for that clarification.
All right, thanks, and Director Hillian.
Thanks, Chair. Sounds a good program, fully in support. I'm just curious, the hours of work involved for our administration, it adds up to about 7 weeks of work, 250 hours. Can we absorb that within our existing complement, or have we got a separate calculation somewhere that shows, what we're doing extra and that we have to hire new staff? I'm just wondering how that factors in.
Yeah, so it's a hard one to know without having administered the program for a year or two under our belt, but I expect we can absorb this within our current staffing. That's the plan anyway at this point.
Well, I appreciate that's a question I had also. Like, that's a very lean program, and that's appreciated, especially given the Go Pass will be completely administered by CVRD staff. And I think also in terms of costs, it's also like the costs you put up on the screen were the total cost if everyone had been buying a full freight ticket or pass, and many of those people sadly probably weren't able to do that. So those aren't actually losses of that kind of revenue. But I wanted to ask with the Go Pass, that we'd be taking, it says referrals from community partners. We'd also be looking at sort of the application forms for LEAP and similar programs. I think it's entirely possible that there, in these economic times, there's far more than 120 people who applied to this. I imagine that's a large part of the hours are allocated there is making those difficult decisions. Do you have sort of an intended mechanism for making those kinds of very difficult choices if there are, say, 300 applications for 120 passes?
Yeah, I think at this point we were planning on kind of a first come, first serve. So we would open up an application and then intake them in chronological order. And so the first 150 that qualified would get them. And that's for a 6-month process. So then after 6 months, there would be another opportunity to either renew those 150, or if there's some people that don't want to renew, there would be some new folks that could get access to the program.
And the 150 figure, that was based to some degree on Kamloops experience, like based upon their population, number of passes they were providing, that sort of thing.
Through the chair, to the directors, yeah. The Kamloops program, when I talk to them, they have about 500 applications coming in every year, of which only about 250, only about half actually manifest, but they have a slightly different approach that they use where it requires a bit more of the residents to go to a service organization to get the vetting done, and then it goes back. So there's different steps, as well as when renewal comes, emails that may or may not have been received, like different factors, which we felt with the LEAP program, we won't have as many barriers in our perception of what's required for someone to actually get a pass. So I do think it will be interesting. And we did in part base the number both on budget, but also on what we learned from the CAMPAS program and their experience. So it is very much going to be, we'll see, what'll happen, because there could be many applicants, and in part, again, how many people are already utilizing LEAP applications that maybe never saw it before, as well as how much does the word get out amongst service organizations. There's a lot of factors, and it would be interesting to see how it develops. Yeah.
Okay. Well, yeah, I mean, you've talked to the folks who are doing it already in Kamloops. There's a lot of good research in there. So seems like a really well-designed program. And I guess after 6 months, you'll be able to come back and let us know how it's gone and if there are any changes or adjustments that you see as being necessary. Okay, we're still on receipt at this point. Is there anyone opposed to receipt? It carries, and the recommendation. All right, it's being moved, and it felt like someone seconded it very quietly. It's Director Brown. Anyone opposed to the recommendation? And that carries. Thanks so much.
Okay, thank
Have
you.
a great evening. Next, enhancement and protection of biological carbon sequestration for receipt. All right, I'll pass it over to CEO. Thanks, James.
Thank you, Chair. Mike Bernard, our Corporate Climate Response Coordinator, and Mike Zabarski, the Manager of Transit and Facilities, are both at the table and will present on this PowerPoint and report on the Comox Valley Biological Carbon Sequestration Project. And so, Mike, over to you.
Thanks, James. Through the CAO and chair to the board, as James mentioned, I'm here to present the findings of a recent study to identify opportunities and strategies to enhance, protect, and restore biological carbon sequestration within the Comox Valley. So this work was undertaken as part of the CEEP, or Corporate Energy and Emissions Plan, which commits the CVRD to achieve net zero greenhouse gas emissions by 2050. However, acknowledging that it would be virtually impossible to reduce emissions all the way to absolute zero, net zero is defined in the plan as a minimum 90% reduction in actual emissions from 2019 levels, with the remainder to be offset or neutralized. So while we could purchase overseas carbon offsets, and that would be relatively inexpensive and simple, there's a desire to spend resources on emissions reduction initiatives and spend those resources so they remain within the region. Biological carbon sequestration projects can achieve this aim while also supporting other CVRD goals and priorities, such as biodiversity preservation, outdoor recreation, air quality, and others. And so last year, the CVRD secured Pynchon Environmental and Engineering out of Victoria to help us to identify and analyze strategies to enhance, protect, and restore biological carbon sequestration potential of natural areas within the Comox Valley. So just quickly at a high level, when we talk about biological carbon sequestration and storage, we mean the natural process through which carbon dioxide is absorbed from the atmosphere by plants and microorganisms and is stored as fixed carbon in biomass and soils. Stored carbon is then released through various natural and man-made processes such as soil respiration, decomposition, and the burning of woody biomass. This image shows some of these processes with respect to forest ecosystems, but similar processes also occur in aquatic ecosystems such as wetlands and coastal. Because human activity has an impact on an ecosystem's ability to capture and store carbon, there's an opportunity to both enhance the ability of various land types to remove carbon from the atmosphere, for example, through sustainable agricultural practices or salt marsh restoration, and to protect stored carbon from being released due to human activity, for example, from avoided tree removal from logging or development. I'm just going to skip ahead here. So while this work was completed as part of the corporate energy and emissions plan, the plan doesn't require that we move forward with corporate emissions offsets in the short term, as resources are better utilized to reduce ongoing greenhouse gas emissions from CVRD facilities, fleet, and equipment. However, this study provides direction for future emissions offsets or neutralization projects when the need arises in later years of the plan, as well as providing direction for how biological carbon considerations can be incorporated into existing work, whether that be for the purpose of offsetting our current emissions that we are producing or for addressing community-related emissions. So this graph illustrates a loose projection of CVRD corporate emissions from 2035 to 2050, if all goes well, where the light blue portion of the graph represents emissions from CVRD operations to be offset in the later years of the plan. This could be achieved through carbon offset purchases, as mentioned, but preferably would be done through local projects initiatives that benefit the community, such as biological carbon projects. And in the meantime, it is important to acknowledge that while the CVRD works to meet corporate emissions targets, it continues to contribute to global warming through its corporate emissions. And so staff will look for opportunities in the coming years to capitalize on existing CVRD work and projects by incorporating aspects of biological carbon protection and enhancement as opportunities arise, and then claiming emissions offsets where possible. So I'll just review some of the key findings of the study and then turn to areas of CVRD work where staff can incorporate some of these results. So yeah, as mentioned, the goal of the study was to identify and assess the best opportunities, both to enhance the ability of ecosystems to sequester carbon and to protect ecosystems from human activity that could release stored carbon or negatively impact those land types' ability to sequester carbon. So the table shown here illustrates the highest impact opportunities for the CVRD measured in equivalent tons of carbon dioxide per hectare per year. The study found that the area where the CVRD can have the greatest impact is through the prevention of forest removal from logging and development. The older a forest is, the greater the potential impact, as there is more carbon stored in the biomass as forests age and trees get larger. In addition to forest protection, other potential opportunities for the CVRD to consider include salt marsh protection and restoration, and promoting sustainable agricultural practices. While salt marsh restoration and protection has a high impact on a per hectare basis, there isn't a lot of existing salt marsh within the region, so there's less overall potential impact relative to forest protection. But still, there may be opportunities to enhance carbon sequestration and storage in these ecosystems as part of upcoming and ongoing coastal flood mitigation projects, and staff will incorporate findings of this study and seek opportunities to enhance, protect, and restore salt marsh as part of that work. And then sustainable agriculture practices such as no-till farming, agroforestry, organic fertilizing, and others, while not rising to the top of the list on a per hectare basis, were identified as meaningful opportunities to enhance soil carbon sequestration within the agricultural sector, which presents potential alignment opportunities with the existing Comox Valley Agriculture Plan. And just lastly on this slide, while the highest impact opportunities identified by our consultants were for protecting forests that are over 250 years old, there really is minimal forest land aged more than 250 years that's not already protected within existing parkland. However, luckily, in addition to the work completed by the CVRD, the Comox Valley Conservation Partnership completed a fairly robust forest carbon study with the University of British Columbia's Sustainability Scholars Program in 2022. And as part of that work, PhD students mapped forest carbon across much of the Comox Valley and have provided the CVRD with a data set that can be used to help identify where the most valuable tracts of forest are located from a stored carbon perspective outside of already protected parkland. The data has been added to the CVRD's IMAP for staff to access, which can be used to support and inform ongoing projects and initiatives, such as the upcoming Parks and Trails Land Acquisition Strategy and the Saratoga Local Area Plan. Now that we understand the value of protecting forest carbon, the CVRD can build upon this foundation and work to prevent the loss of stored carbon from logging and land use change where feasible. Yeah, and now I'm happy to take any questions.
All right, thanks very much. Go first to Director Arbor.
Yeah, just some pretty good work. It reminds me in 2018 when a couple of us at the board were pushing for us to do precisely this. And at the time, I think we were buying $2 a ton from India. And that's pretty much all we were doing. And we were told, oh no, it'll be too expensive, too complicated to try to develop local forest carbon strategy. But 8 years later, here we are. So just chipping away at it, and I think you've done great work in connecting with research that's been done and the conservation partnership. So, and I agree with you. Well, I don't have to agree with you. Just the numbers say that we're probably better off reducing our emissions right now, but eventually, in 20 years, this will make sense as we can't reduce anymore, as we can't really achieve net zero. So, really a thoughtful report. So, thank you.
Great. Director Brown.
Thanks. Similar kudos to the report and the work included. And I agree that absolutely trees are probably our best bet for protection. And I wonder, I know we don't have tree protection or the ability to do tree protection, but do we have the ability to, prescribe canopy cover or other planning tools, not just for carbon sequestration, but that sort of thing. And the other question, while you guys are sorting that one out, is I don't see wetlands. And coming from the village of Cumberland, which has previously been described as the swamp at the bottom of the hill, I do think wetlands are vital carbon sequestration, but they're not really mentioned here outside of salt marshes. So if you can speak to that.
Yeah, sure. Through the CAO to the director and chair to the director. So in terms of planning tools to protect forests, it's true that we can't do a tree protection bylaw. So our tools are somewhat limited, and especially with the extensive amount of ALR land, which kind of prevents some protection, as well as the logging, privately managed forest lands. Does make things difficult, which is why we focused in so much on parkland acquisition, just given the limited nature of regulatory tools. However, we have been sort of in the early phases of exploring other planning tools we could use, such as development permit areas potentially. And we'll be looking at that more through the Saratoga local area plan process as we work with consultants that have been hired by the long range planning team. Just to see if there's opportunity to pilot any of those tools there. And then to your second question with respect to wetlands, we have connected with staff within the CVRD who are working in that area, and they're aware of this work. So we'll forward the report on to them as well. We didn't highlight it so much here, mostly just because it didn't come up as a super promising opportunity relative to others in terms of scale. That doesn't mean that it's not something we should consider as part of that work, but more that the purpose here was just to hone us in on the most valuable opportunities, particularly
if we were to approach carbon sequestration from a corporate emissions perspective, looking for offsets in the future. But for sure, we will be forwarding all this on to our staff working on those projects as well.
Okay, great. Thanks.
Great. Director Morin.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Well, kind of a related question on that theme. I'm wondering if it's time to change the Local Government Act, because when I saw this in the report, I went to that area of the Local Government Act around tree cutting, because I never really understood why we can't manage tree cutting in the regional district. And I know my electoral director friends are going to tell me to get in my lane and stay out of their areas. But I think, you know, we see Cumberland has done a great job of, you know, keeping some forests to help with this issue. But I guess I'm, you know, with what we're seeing with climate change, do you have any information about provincially whether there's any movement to take a look at this? Because it seems like it's sort of the Wild West. Like you can pretty much just level, you know, anything in the regional district, and then you've got the private managed forest lands, you know, as well. So we're really losing trees rapidly.
Yeah, through the CAO and chair to the director. I think I haven't seen anything significant coming from the province around this area, though I admittedly I can't see everything that they're saying and planning and coming out. And also not being a planner myself, things with respect to the Local Government Act are not really in my wheelhouse. However, I will say that we have connected with other departments within the CBRD, such as the both watershed protection and wildfire protection mitigation, and they have expressed frustration with the privately managed forest lands act as well. So there may be an opportunity for advocacy with the province in that area. As it stands right now, I think it's still a bit of a challenge.
I would say just as a thought that there is a concerted move to update the Local Government Act. It's being led by a number of RD chairs, and Don Lidstone has donated a considerable amount of time, and this is certainly something that's come up in those discussions. So yeah, no, just good things come to those who wait. All right, and we'll go to Director Hillian.
Thanks, Chair. Do we have any capacity to encourage people in the regional district to plant more trees? There's a lot of land out there, and you know, if we set an objective of planting more trees, maybe we can make a slight difference that way.
Yeah, through the CAO and chair to the director, it's something that we can definitely look into. I will say one of the findings of this study, and it's not to downplay the importance of tree planting, was that the older a forest gets, the more valuable it gets, which makes sense, obviously. So the benefits of planting trees relative to protecting existing carbon from being lost is going to be less. However, it might also be less expensive to do so. So it's something that we can look at. From a corporate emissions perspective, I think the value would be difficult relative to use of resources elsewhere. However, I think, you know, we do have the climate action strategy that just came out that could be looking at things like that. And there's probably community interest as well. So it's something that we could definitely look at.
All right, thanks. And I realize I turned both your lights on at the same time. But Director Grief first, then Director Hardy. Director Grief, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, when I moved onto my property 22 years ago, the previous owner had some lawyer issues and had to clear cut the property to pay his bill. But when I moved, nothing against lawyers. So when I moved in there, it looked like a bit like a moonscape, but I call it the alder ranch because guess what? The alder trees grew back all by themselves. And then underneath the alder trees are coming along all the Douglas fir and the spruce, and they're all coming up all by themselves. So it does replenish on its own. Not to mention the fact that I did get 200 seedlings from a tree planter friend of mine and put them in there as well. But Tim Ennis actually made a presentation a couple of years ago at the Farmers Institute, and you can actually get a covenant on your trees, on your property. So there's a method of if the farmer has, and a lot of them do have a little bit of mature second growth on their property, just for future generations to preserve it. There's some mechanism you can actually go through where you put a covenant on the trees, and even though you sell the land, the new owner cannot cut them down. So it's out there.
Did not know that. That's useful. Director Hardy, go ahead, please.
Yeah, thanks. And just to add a little bit more to Director Gillian's comment earlier, and I was going to ask the same question with regards to, again, recognizing that the amount of agricultural lands that we have in the Comox Valley that aren't being fully utilized for agricultural purposes. But is there a means of the Comox Valley Regional District making arrangements with these farmers to perhaps plant seedlings? And going back to some of the data that you provided with old growth trees of being 250 plus years old that can absorb greenhouse gases, maybe it doesn't happen overnight, but over a period of 75 years, 100 years, those seedlings do make a significant difference here in the Comox Valley. So I'm just wondering again, even with regards to, there's a number of farmers in the valley that are getting old in the tooth that are looking to sell their farms. Maybe that's another route with regards to parks being able to purchase some of these agriculture farms and then planting seeds to turn around and make the world go around with regards to carbon sequestration. So just some thoughts there.
All right, thanks, Director Hardy. I mean, that'd be a bold endeavor and a long-term kind of legacy project for a board. So something to consider there. I don't see any more lights. I just wanted to add a comment. Just I really appreciate the work. Kind of echoing what Director Arbor was saying. It was almost laughed at the idea that we could develop a reliable program for sequestration here. And I think over the last number of years, offshore carbon offsets have become quite questionable, like slightly more reliable than meme coins, but not maybe hugely. And I think to have something that is scientifically grounded offsets that you can believe in, that are 100% actually there and in our community. Anyway, that's a really great step forward. So thanks for all the work that went into that. We're on receipt. Anyone opposed to receipt? And there's a recommendation. Okay. All right. Any comment on the recommendation? Anyone opposed? And that carries. Thanks very much. All right, next we move on to the 2026 to 2030 proposed financial plan. I'll pass this over to our CAO.
Thank you, Chair. Just give a chance for Lucy Witchart to set up at the microphone there. So Lucy's going to be introducing the 2026 to 2030 proposed financial plan and capital expenditure program and speak to the process that we'll be following over the next several weeks, all the way up until the end of March when the budget bylaw needs to be adopted. I want to recognize the work that Lucy and her team and really the entire service team at the regional district has been working on for the budget over the past many months. Even just today, Lucy and I were talking about the budget process for next year already. So this is a process that carries on and doesn't really stop. But today is a major milestone in presenting the post-financial plan. Lucy will speak to this a little bit as well, but today is the kickoff for the budget in an overall sense. And you'll know from previous years that we have individual committee and commission and board meetings over the next coming weeks where we talk about the individual service budgets. And so today really is that kickoff. Lucy will touch on many different factors of the budget. And then during the individual committee commission meetings, we'll be able to dive much more deeply into the details of all the different services. So Lucy, over to you.
Yeah. So good evening, Chair Cole Hamilton and directors. Through the CAO to the chair, I'm pleased to be here today to deliver to you the CVRD's 2026 proposed financial plan. To support me in presenting and as a large part of pulling this together are Kelly Broughton, our Manager of Financial Planning, and Financial Analyst Laurel Korn and Jared Sexton. The presentation is broken out into about 8 areas, and will take about 15-20 minutes of your time, and will provide to you key considerations for this year's proposed financial plan, including estimated impact on Comox Valley households. The board's endorsed strategic plan provides direction to staff for advancement, promoting sustainable growth and safeguarding the environment. The establishment of initiatives flow into the preparation of the financial plan, are considered by directors as part of the budget process and approved for advancement within the annual budget bylaw. Within work plans and budgets, each core service area has incorporated strategy-aligned actions. As the overview and individual services are presented, how financial resources are proposed as needed to accomplish the desires of the board and delivery of services will become clear. The environment in which we currently live in seems to present even more uncertainty than 1 year ago. While inflation is more stable, households continue to struggle with affordability and housing issues. The risk of cost escalation associated with our capital projects remain. Trade agreements with the US continues to pose risks. The main assumptions made in the preparation of this budget include interest rate on financing assumed at 4.5% across all 5 years. Longer term rates are a bit higher, however, they do remain below 5%. The CVRD uses principles of zero-based budgeting, and therefore most 2026 budget lines, for the most part, are built without a CPI factor, and where needed, projections for inflation have been applied, either a 2 or 2.5% increase. The 2026 proposed operating budget is $106 million. This graph shows personnel costs totaling $31 million, increasing $2.5 million from the 2025 budget. Debt servicing costs at $11.5 million, decreasing by just over $300,000. Operating costs are projected to be almost $51 million. The 2026 budget proposes a total of $12 million as transfers to reserves. It's $1 million change from last year. The 2025 reserve transfers was about $13.2 million. This figure included almost $5 million in prior year surplus coming from 2025. The carry forward projects and surplus figures associated with 2025 will be incorporated into the recommended budget and are not included in this proposed budget. The 2026 proposed capital financial plan is $45 million. Engineering infrastructure, primarily for water, sewage, and solid waste management, is the most significant element. I'll touch on the most, some capital projects as we move on. The CVRD operates 8 core services, plus administers the operations of solid waste management. Solid waste management is the largest when comparing operating budgets, about $22 million. Water supply is the next largest, about $16 million, and this is followed closely by sewage treatment and recreation. EA services as a key function of the CVRD involves more than $10 million in financial resources. There are many ways to show changes in tax requisitions, and in this particular size, the change year over year in tax requisitions is an increase of $2 million, and this is a 5.8% increase. The largest impact is to transit and electoral area services. Just for clarity, this excludes sewage treatment, which involves a $10.5 million levy amount. That's for Comox and Courtney, and solid waste management that includes taxations of $5.5 million. By looking at the major changes by the individual services tax requisition, an understanding of advancing the board's priorities, changes in service levels, and the pressures on some existing services can be seen. Within finance and administration core service, the overall change is about $211,000. Key changes include the appropriated cost per shareholder of North Island 911 has risen. The CVRD portion is $33,500 more than the prior year. The CVRD's share of library services has increased approximately $100,000, this experiencing a similar increase to the year before. Costs associated with the administration of electoral area has risen. Taxation has increased $70,000 to address additional advertising, professional fees, and staffing. And there's a small incremental increase to cemetery service. Services included within the electoral area core services see an overall change of $715,000. Planning services has an overall increase of $350,000. This is associated with project work and personnel costs. Service 620, Hornby Community Parks and Greenways sees the near completion of their boat launch, and debt servicing has increased approximately $62,000. And in Service 672, Bain Sound Community Facility sees an increase of taxation to cover debt servicing for the Fanny Bay Seniors Hall. The core service of regional sustainability, we have a small increase of $40,000. For transportation, this is related to the delivery of transit, of course, across the whole of the Comox Valley. Service levels have increased here for conventional and handy dart transit, and the associated increase in taxes is $332,000. Core service recreation. We'll see an overall increase of $450,000. For recreation complexes, staff continue to advance planning to reach sustainable service delivery. The 2026 plan requires requisitions to rise in order to meet asset management needs, and this amounts to $875,000. Recreation grants have decreased by $175,000. While some grants provided through this service have increased, the funds requested by the City of Courtenay have decreased. And lastly, as an essential area, the core service of regional emergency services is proposing a $270,000 increase. More than $183,000 of this change is associated with fire services. And in the essential area of emergency programs, an additional $85,000 is being proposed. And finally, for this section, I'll move on to the services which are utilities, and that being our water, sewage, and solid waste management. The CVRD has an essential role in providing these services to households in the valley. These three services alone make up 48% of the proposed budget. Utility rates is the primary means for funding. Parcel tax plays a role, as does taxation for part of the revenue needed for solid waste management. The Comox Valley water supply system takes care of treating water and getting it to the partners distribution system. A bulk water rate is used, and it is being held constant at $1 per cubic meter. Rate increases are expected to future years. Across multiple other water services, EASC directors have endorsed funding plans coming from the results of water rate reviews. That was from 2023. And parcel taxes and utility rates have been adjusted accordingly. For sewage treatment, the CVRD service responsible for service treatment charges out based on flows. And this is for Comox and Courtenay. These two municipalities then charge the households through setting their own utility rates. The planned increase is $500,000. Separately governed by the Comox Strathcona Waste Management Board, the solid waste management service is funded largely by tipping fees and some taxation. Tax requisitions of $5.5 million for this service are included within the CVRD budget. This is charged through to households within Comox and Strathcona regional districts as a separate rate on tax notices. The amount has remained unchanged from prior years. Tipping fees makes up the largest portion of funding, as I mentioned. Municipalities are charged those tipping fees, who in turn work that into their corresponding municipal rates and taxation. The individual users at landfills will pay tipping fees, as we are aware, and there have been some increases to tipping fees for 2026. So the upcoming slides, one second. Wanted to make sure this is the right one. Right. Thank you. So we'll provide estimations, as we typically do, for those typical households. And before we go there, I just want to just say a few words about assessment values. Within the first few days of January, BC Assessment issues the 2026 roll. BC Assessment has communicated that the changes from last year is trending as a mix of small increases and small decreases. This is similar to 2025, and the range being once again between plus or minus 5%. The chart provides the typical assessed values for the CVRD participants and the change year over year. All the increases are staying below 3%. These specific typical assessments have been used when we determine the estimations on the following charts. For each municipal partner, the estimated change per typical household is shown. First on this chart, for households in Courtenay, the proposed budget has an estimated effect of $32.29 more per year, or $2.69 a month. For Comox, $24.43 more per year, or $2.04, and for Cumberland, $27.20 more, or $2.27 a month. In our electoral areas, estimates are prepared as follows. Just keep in mind, as I know you're quite aware that services vary a fair bit across the areas. So for Area A, Bain Sound has an increase of $108.72 more per year, or $9.89 a month. Denman Island sees an increase of $94.39 more, or $7.87 per month. Hornby, an increase of $99.33 or $8.28 per month. For Area B, $92.93 more, or $7.74 per month. And for Area C, $61.59 more, or $5.13 per month. The details associated down to the service levels can be found on the website through the links. It's important to note that there are other combinations as well as what you see on this slide. And this is because the amounts don't include the individual local services, such as fire departments, or some, in cases, street lighting, small sewer services, etc. So citizens can use our tax calculator to get a really good idea of the services that are associated with their property, and get an idea of what that property increase is going to be. So there's various means out there for directors and for citizens to get an idea of what this is going to look like for themselves, for their household budgets. The CVRDs oversees 3 other related entities, and each entity provides a key service to the Valley. North Island 911 and the Regional Hospital District are separate companies with their own governing boards. North Island 911 experienced a modest increase in costs, and requisitions have been increased by 5% in 2026 and is planned to stay down at 4% for subsequent years. The hospital district continues with planning for additional future facilities, however, is not expecting tax requisitions to rise either in 2026 or the 4 years that follow. Comox Strathcona Waste Management is under the direction of the separate board with authority over their operations and budgets. The board received and reviewed their proposed budget in the fall of 2025 and adopted the budget on January 8th. The board continues the work associated with the solid waste management plan update, and the plan will shape future service levels and changes to budgets as well. Just going to move to capital plan. Just overall, CVRD does prepare 10-year capital plans, and we're just working every year to make that better. And then some of our key services you have seen us create 20-year plans as well. So this graph just draws attention to our most intense area, which is water, sewer, and solid waste management. This second slide shows you the funding that's associated. The green lines here is the money coming from our savings or our reserves, which is substantial. However, large infrastructure needs require significant debt, and those are the gray bars that you see there. As the board is aware, there are a number of grant applications that are pending for some projects. And if the CVRD is successful applicant, the grant funding will certainly help to reduce the debt levels. Over the course of the next 5 years, the proposed budget indicates approximately 350 million in capital projects. The next 3 slides include some of those main projects organized by core service. Some projects span multiple years and some just are will be complete over the course of 1 year. I'm not going to go through them all as this PowerPoint just can act as another resource for directors or the public. Just come back and key in onto areas that may be of most interest to you. In electoral area, work will continue on One Spot Trail at $1.4 million. Within emergency services, the planning and construction of a new fire hall in Denman Island will commence, and the projected cost is $6.5 million. Capital for rural fire services includes 2 fire engines, a tanker truck, and a ladder truck. In sewage treatment, the sewer conveyance project nears completion with a budget just over of $11.6 million in the proposed. On the heels of the conveyance project is a required upgrade to the plant. This is a significant project, currently projected to cost over $100 million. Water supply, the next significant projects for water include Water South Service Extension for $18 million and the preliminary fee to East Courtney and Comox at $50.7 million. And lastly, $3 million each work for the treatment plant at Graham Lake and water main replacements at Black Creek. Again, these are just, it's not all the projects, it's just a sample of some. And lastly, in recreation, for recreation complexes, Service 645, the Arena 3 project as a new community amenity included within the Recreation Commission strategy is planned over 4 years for a total of $46 million. As well, this service is dealing with significant asset life cycling. A total of 9.3 is scheduled for the sports center and 4.6 million for the aquatic center. Various projects for the exhibition center amount to 562,000. We pay close attention to reserves and debt. It's an essential part of fiscal management, as we all know. The line on this graph represents the ending balances for all of our services, and this is about reserves. Contributions to reserves stay between about $12 to $16 million. Planned large capital projects drive the large withdrawals from funds, and reserves are dipping low at 2027. See, it's pretty heavily intensive capital over the next 5 years. Then they start to build back up. Through the work we conduct within the fiscal framework and the advancement of asset management, we'll further analyze and understand what will be required to reach and maintain sustainable operations. And close attention given to the levels of debt as to not overuse the application of this type of funding, causing high interest costs to future years. Debt levels reach a projected high of $337 million at the end of 2030. As many of our major capital projects are well underway during this period. Public participation, just a few quick points for you on that. We're pleased to continue to offer multiple ways for the public to be involved. We saw citizens participate during 2025 cycle, and we are hopeful to get increased involvement this year. We're always trying to improve the participation as we go. The engagement site continues to be used as a focal point. Citizens are best directed to this area. They can learn about the process, and it clearly shows key events and how citizens can be involved. They can be asking questions, provide feedback. Staff will respond quickly to questions. And finally, as put out a couple of years ago now, is the tax calculator. And as I mentioned earlier, it's a super great place for the public to get a really good idea of what's happening with their budget. We will gather the feedback and provide it from the citizens and provide you with an update as we walk through our deliberation days and get to a recommended budget. The Engage site is live. Budgets have been posted out there, and there's already 2 pieces of feedback out there. So I think that's a really good start. So coming up next, will be the budget meetings, the budget deliberation meetings that we have scheduled for February 2nd, the 9th, the 10th, and the 11th. Okay, will be the place where our budget managers and the staff will make presentations to the individual services, and directors can deliberate, and we can flesh out any other information that you may need to make your decisions. So once complete, staff will return to March 11 meeting of the CVRD board with the recommended budget. The meetings that are scheduled in February for the 24th and the 25th can be used to bring back any additional information requests coming from those initial meetings that are set for the second week in February, the first and second week in February. The board must adopt their budget before the end of March, and right now that bylaw reading is planned for March 17th. So that concludes my presentation. The intent with the delivery of the budget today is to give elected officials enough of an overview just to gain an understanding of the major items included. There's a lot of information, a lot of ways to bring that forward. So it's just want to be able to bring forward and show you some of the pressure points, some risks and implications to services, and the implications to our households. The budget package was published last week, giving time prior to those deliberation meetings to have a look at all of the information that's there provided to you for each one of the services. And we do highly encourage, if there's any clarification questions that you may have as you're going through the information, please don't hesitate to send those requests my way, and we will do our best to provide you additional information that you may need. And I, at this time, just want to take a moment just to put out a huge thank you out to the financial planning staff, Jared, Laurel, Christy, and Kelly, and our whole finance team, as it takes many resources, and we're drawing across all of our managers and our other staff as well in order to bring this budget together. And a very large thank you out to our budget managers, their support staff, and EMT. So thanks for your time and attention, directors. And as always, we really look forward to walking through the next steps of the budget process with you. So happy to answer any questions you may have today. However, we do always remind that your detailed questions are better suited for when we're doing the services for you, because all of the necessary staff will be here in the room and will be very much ready to answer those questions for you then.
Great. Thanks very much, Lucy, and to the rest of the team sitting there at the back of the room. We appreciate all of your help in putting this together. And we got a few questions here. We'll go to Director Brown first.
Thanks. And yes, kudos to staff for bringing this forward, and particularly for the engagement piece for the public. I know how challenging it is for the general public to understand how we spend our money. And this is a really great tool. However, I can't find the tax calculator. So if someone could help me locate that would be great.
I'll send you out.
All right, I assume that'll happen
Oh,
at some
did it
point
come up?
coming up soon. Director Arbor, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, it's kind of a sobering presentation underneath the, the lightness of it. Yeah, I mean, it's evident in regards to my communities, Bainstown continues to be under pressure. Those three communities, we have close to, I think, $60 or $70 million in projects right now. And that pressure is intensifying. So I'm hoping that at the onset of the ESC session, staff could come prepared with for us to do a bit of a dive into the Community Works Funds allocation for the next number of years, because I'd like to understand the different scenarios, how we deploy those resources. And looking at a 9.2% overall increase in the EAs, I mean, I understand some of those drivers for it, but just like last year, I think I'm going to come with an attitude of looking for some serious cuts to bring it back down towards a 5 or 6% target or something like that. I don't know if it'll be feasible. It was hard last year, but we did make some improvements on those budgets. And I just want to say that was a bit of a tough year, in my opinion, on the delivery side. So there's a cost to us not delivering projects on time. And when we have projects that should take 1 year and go to 2, 3, or 4 years, there's a real cost that carries forward with that, both in time lost and also in just increasing costs. So I'm hoping that that won't be the case, especially as we embark on those huge capital projects in my area. So I'm going to go down to the Union Bay Fire Hall. I'm going down every 2 weeks to see the progress, and I'm going to try to keep an eye. But I'm hoping staff can tighten up a little bit in our delivery around some of these projects because, for example, on the Hornby one, you can see how much of a cost driver that boat ramp is on the island. And when we don't deliver the perfect product on time and have to go back, that's a huge hit to both our financial picture and also or how residents perceive our performance. Thanks.
Thanks, Director Robert, and I'll go next to Director McCollum.
Yeah, my first question was just around the presentation of the increase per household for the municipalities, and that it doesn't bring in the cost of sewer increases. And I'm just wondering why we wouldn't include that. I realize that's a cost that gets passed on slightly differently because it comes through our utility, but having that, I mean, the sewer increases are and the capital plan are in this. So I don't know if you know what that is off the top of your head and how it compares to the rest of the increases. And then is the same true for water, that we don't show the increased costs of water because it's passed on through a utility?
Yeah, through the chair on your from a water perspective, they're charged through the volume, right? So that just that is the way that the communities are how the revenue is collected from a water perspective, and that just rolls into their utility rates. There is no taxation included in that. I hear what you're saying, that what you're looking for is a more holistic picture from the perspective of how are the households affected. There's an element that's about utilities, and there's an element that's about taxation as well. From a sewer perspective, we refer to that item as a requisition. It's included within our budget. However, it's based on volumes. So it felt, as we've brought you budgets, or I've brought you budgets over the last couple of years, I saw the information presented in a couple of ways. We needed to be able to bring some consistency to that. And we talked about that long and hard. We don't see that as a tax requisition because it is a levy amount that is based on volumes, and that's how that money is collected. There is no question that it has implications to households. I know that you're very well aware of the implications of both water and sewer.
Well, and I mean, just from a public communications perspective, yes, like the slide basically says this is the increase per year and it's $30, but it's not, even in the context of what we're contemplating in the budget. And so, I mean, I don't, obviously figuring out what that number would be a different type of calculation than using the assessment. But I mean, there must be a way to know how many houses are paying into that increase. And maybe that's just something that we could try to estimate in some way, because I think that $30 is pretty misleading, because our biggest cost drivers are not in that $30 figure. It's in the other services that we're kind of ignoring here, or not ignoring, but not representing. So I just wanted to flag that, because I think it leads us to the wrong conclusion when it comes to what our increases are. And then the other question is it okay if I just do two? Thanks. Just around the projections of, we've got a pretty clear sense of what the impact is this year, but we don't really see anything looking out beyond that. And you know, we have a slide there that shows rising debt levels. It looks like our contributions to reserves are 30% more next year than this year. So I just feel like we're looking through a very narrow slit of what the actual picture is. And I noticed I haven't had a chance to really dig into what has been posted in the Engage page, but I did see that we have projections of what the revenue requirements are for the different services, but I'm not sure that I saw, you know, a projection of kind of where expenses are going. So maybe we could kind of look at that as well in this process. And then my question around that was, I saw on the slide for this year that we're actually putting a lower amount into revenue contributions this year. And then it looks like it goes up 30% next year. And I'm just wondering why is there variation? Is that just from like surplus carryover? Is there like an accounting reason why it varies like that?
To the chair, just be clear on your question, and you're speaking of the change of transfers from reserve from 2025 to 2026.
I'm talking about the contribution to reserve slide. I think it was, we were doing slightly less this year than what was in 2025.
Yes.
And then further in the presentation, there's a projection of contributions to reserves looking forward. And it looks like next year is about 30% more than this year. So I'm just wondering why that is.
Lucy, I was going to say, would it be possible to locate those slides just for ease of reference for the rest of us? Thank you.
Okay, so here's your reserve slide. So from for 2025, and it's in 2025 isn't on the slide, but our transfers to reserve for 2025 was $13.2 million. In it's that is your adopted budget, and included in that adopted budget is an amount for carry forwards and surplus that's in there. So that's one of the differences that's there between last year and this year. As we go forward in 2027, that figure 2026 is $12.3 million worth of contributions. When we go to 2027, it's almost $16 million, which is your second question, is why is that vary so much? And the way that I'll explain that is that when we actually consider our 10-year capital plans, and even potentially what we know about going further beyond the 10 years, this is how we are working to balance off our reserves and to determine what our contributions need to be. We have to have balanced budget across the board, operating and capital, and it's not unusual to see this. I know the team works these really tightly, and we've had to be able to, for some of our services that are stretched, in order to keep our tax requisitions, we really try to keep those tax requisition increases down below that 10%. And in doing that and managing, even on obviously from a utility perspective as well, where some of these very large projects are, to be able to, I like to describe it as a just in time, bringing our money in to be able to have enough to be able to handle the reserves that are needed to have a cash component of our capital projects, and also keep that debt level as reasonable as possible. So they will vary, and that's why you're seeing it go up and down as you go.
Yeah, I guess just my concern is that without really understanding what we're putting into 2027 in terms of increases, it's just hard to tell where that 30% increase is coming from. Are we expecting to need to, is that coming on in addition to an increase in tax requisition in order to fund that change? And we can't see it from the information here. So I'm just flagging it as a question. Thanks.
And we most certainly really struggle at times with what level of information to bring you. I know you don't want me to be standing here speaking to you over the course of half an hour or an hour. Super appreciate any additional information that you want. We absolutely can tell you exactly what's driving the $15 million going into 2027. And generally speaking, what the implications are to taxation in that year. So we can take that down as a note. We can prepare and bring that at the onset of our meeting that's scheduled for the 2nd, so that you have that additional information. And very significantly happy to bring you additional information on what's happening out from year 4 to 5.
All right, thanks very much. And we'll go to Director Carr, go ahead.
Thanks, Chair, and thanks, Lucy, for the report. Can we go back one slide? Nope, forward one slide, the debt slide. Okay, so I made it through the presentation okay, and then I hit this slide and got a little more nervous. Just to share with the other directors and staff, just kind of what my thinking is. This year, the debt level being where it is, like 150 million or so. And the CBRD was created in 2008. So in the last 18 years, if you extended this graph out this way to the left, it took us 18 years to get to there. And now it looks like we're going to double it, more than double it in 5 years. So it makes me a little nervous, just in terms of like the trend, the history of the organization, a very rapid increase in debt, understanding the large projects that are underway and that are being planned in the near future. So this is kind of where my greatest level of discomfort lies. And I don't have a solution tonight. I'm just kind of raising that and flagging that. And maybe it's something that we can discuss when we have our longer planning meetings and delving into the finances more. Thanks.
Thank you for that. It makes us nervous too, and you'll see the theme repeated and further information, detailed information provided as you hit those services that are faced with that.
I would concur with Lucy on the nervousness over that rising debt. I would also say that if you go back in time to 2008, we weren't formed in 2008 with zero debt. We would have inherited debt at the time, and that graph would have fluctuated to some degree over the previous 18 years or so. So, but I concur with Lucy on the anxiety around the increasing debt loads.
All right, thanks. And go to Director Hardy.
Yeah, thanks. And I can't remember what slide it was, but I did see that function 500 for planning. We had a huge jump of $350,000. I'm just kind of wondering if you could maybe explain a little bit more about that, because I know constituents are going to be coming up to me at home hardware or whatever and screaming bloody murder. What am I getting for that planning increase of $350,000? So maybe if you could help me out, thanks.
For sure. Yeah. So at a high level, what the $350,000 relates to is there's a number of planning projects that are planned in that area for execution. And then there was some small increases in personnel costs and maybe advertising. What I can point you to is detailed out on the website with the budget information, the general budget information that's related to that service, are some briefing notes as well. So that has some information that's about additional projects that are being considered. And if you would like, James, do you think it's appropriate to go there now, or I would have to ask Alana to speak to that? Or is it okay, Director Hardy, if we address that more fully when we get to the EASC meeting? Is that okay? Yeah, you'll certainly hear about them.
So until Monday, you'll have to just run quickly at home hardware if someone tries to collar you, but we'll know by
the purpose.
Yeah. Monday, we've got a whole day of this ahead of us. So, all right. Well, thanks so much for answering all of our questions at this point. So we're on receipt. Is anyone opposed to receipt? And that carries, and there's no recommendation. And I believe that dinner has arrived, so I think we're going to take a break until 10 minutes after. So we'll be back soon. So we have asset management supplementary information, and it's for receipt. You'd like to move receipt? Go on. Okay. Thank you. It's gonna take longer if we do it this way. All right, so we're on receipt. I'll pass this over to our CAO.
Thank you very much. And so thanks, directors, for entertaining us again with the asset management program, this supplementary report. This comes to you after we originally presented in October and then subsequent meetings in November and December. And this report, Tina will be introducing the report and walking through the different themes that were identified, as well as presenting the recommendation and the changes that were understood or that were proposed through the discussions with the committees and commissions. And so, Tina, please, over to you.
Good evening through the CEO and chair to the directors. So today I will briefly summarize the feedback we heard from the previous meeting, November. We have a November 25th board meeting. We also have a couple conversations with commissions and committees in December. And then I will walk through the two options staff have developed in response, followed by our recommendation. So the key themes we heard from last year's conversation are delivery modules, cost and benefits, and also the pace of implementation. I'll start with the delivery module. So determining the most appropriate delivery module was one of the first initial steps in developing the AM program. Staff have completed the due diligence through the research, consultant analysis, and also the conversation with other local governments. So the hybrid delivery module is the most commonly adopted approach among local governments and was also recommended by the consultant CVRD retained in the early 2025, as it provides a consistent corporate approach to our AM policy and strategy while enabling efficient implementation across the organization. While a hybrid module is recommended at this time, the program will continue to evolve along the central-decentral continuum to maximum on the available resources. One key principle to always be applied is that program have corporate or central policy and goals to support the department or decentral service delivery. Now it comes to the cost and benefit part. So we mentioned in previous staff reports, a proactive AM approach helps avoid costly emergency repair, service interruptions, and premature or delayed asset replacement. As noted by the board, a significant component of the AM is preventative maintenance, similar to the preventative medicine in healthcare. Investing in planned maintenance and informed decision-making, the CVRD can reduce long-term cost, improve service reliability, and extend asset life cycle. A key outcome of an AM program is to improve decision at board, corporate, and operational level. As maturity increase, more information can be provided to the board. Like this report, we borrowed from District of Saanich website, so they have their assets status report. They show up the remaining useful life, replacement cost, and assets condition. So this is also what we visioning provide to the board in the future. Initiatives presented in the AM strategy implementation plan are not intended to position the CVRD as a gold star, but to advance over maturity from initial stage to middle point over the implementation period. And comes to the implementation pace. So multiple factors guide the pace of the AM implementation, including business risk, regulatory requirements, organizational readiness and culture, and also resource availability. So as we discussed before, many of our CVRD services are highly regulated. Service interruptions resulting from failures of a critical infrastructure can impact on human health, cause property damage, can also damage CVRD's reputation. So staff have been seeking appropriate tools or resources to better manage the critical assets for some time. Asset Management Steering Committee has advanced a change management initiative, including the development of AM competency framework and also delivery of AM awareness activities to support this organizational transition. So the pace of implementation will depend on the board's direction and also the level of resource approved by the board. Staff presented the original option last year in October and a couple more in November. Based on the feedback, 2 more options have been developed. So option 1 is AM program applied to all 3 core services. We're going to reduce funding and resource from the proposed financial plan and extend the implementation timeline for all services. A little bit more detail. So we're going to reduce the branch level AM specialist to be onboarded in 2026. Original plan was 3. Now we will reduce to 2, defer 1 to 2028. Also defer the hiring of additional fleet and facility coordinator, FTE, previously scheduled for 2028. Furthermore, AM implementation proceeds for water, wastewater, recreation, while fire, facility, fleet, and parks have their implementation deferred to subsequent phases. Having 2 AM specialists supporting the 3 core services will help reduce the risk of a silo approach between core services and promote a more centralized, coordinated approach. And staff will update the AM roadmap and return to the board in the later spring. So option 1 will provide about 1.7 million saving from 2026 to 2029, compared with the funding requirements we presented in October. You can find more details in Appendix C of the staff report. So those savings are coming from the deferred human resource, deferred consulting costs, and technology projects related to fire, parks, and facility, fleet. Also some cost refinements. The October's number was a very high level estimation. And the option 2, so the AM program apply on selected services. So we also reducing funding and resource and focus AM advancement on selected service only, maintaining implementation timeline for those services. Same with option 1, we reduce the branch level AM specialist FTE to be onboarded in 2026 from 3 to 2, with the 3rd one deferred to 2028. Also defer the hiring of additional fleet and facility coordinator FTE previously scheduled for 2028. And AM implementation proceeds only for 2 core services that are directed by the board within the first 2 years, with 1 core services deferred to 2028. Again, fire, facility, fleet, parks deferred to a subsequent implementation term. Having 2 AM specialists working on 2 core services, this will maximize the progress in the selected highest priority services. If board support option 2, the board will have to decide which 2 out of 3 core services will have the AM program applied. The 3 core services being water, wastewater, and recreation. So in option 2, we prepared 3 scenarios. You can refer to Appendix D in the staff report. First scenario, defer water, which means wastewater recreation will be prioritized in the first 2 years. Second scenario is defer wastewater. So we'll have water recreation be prioritized in the first 2 years. The last scenario is defer recreation, which means water, wastewater will be prioritized in the first 2 years. So even if 1 core service is deferred, the majority of the supporting service costs will still be incurred. As a result, the overall cost of saving under this option is not significantly different compared with the savings from option 1. The range is from 1.7 million to 1.8 million, compared with, again, October's funding requirement. With 1 core service deferred to 2028, the associated costs will also be deferred, so results in more savings in 2 years, the first 2 years, 2026 and 2027. Again, consulting cost and technology project costs related to the fire, park, facility, and fleet are deferred to a subsequent implementation phases, so those costs are not included in any of those 2 options. So we prepared a high-level summary for those 2 options we just presented. Staffing onboarding schedule is the same for both options. Number of core service included in first phase AM implementation is different. Option 1 will including 3, and option 2 will only including 2, with 1 deferred to 2028. Both options will defer fire facility fleet and park to next implementation phase. And from quantitative perspective, it is insignificant on the overall savings compare option 1 and option 2. Like we listed at the last row in that table. So option 1 will probably like saving 1.7 million compared with October's staff reports. Option 2 is about 1.7 million to 1.8 million compared with the October staff report. Any additional savings under option 2 should be weighted against the increased risk exposure and potential long-term costs associated with delaying those essential or critical service. From qualitative perspective, there are pros and cons for both options, what are listed in the staff reports. So comes to our recommendation, water, wastewater are essential service. However, recreation assets also deliver critical community value and face increasing service delivery and safety risk associated with aging infrastructure, overdue assets renewal, and limited technological support. So through the December's discussion with committees and commissions, no clear directions was made that any of those core services can be or should be deferred. So advancing all 3 core services at a reduced pace can better manage overall organizational risk. Therefore, staff recommend option 1. Lastly, Ms. Chair, I'm available for any questions you may have.
Thank you. I'm trying not to sneeze, so I'm just going to go to Director McCollum, wriggle my nose.
Thanks, Chair, and thanks for coming back with this report and laying out these options for us. I'm still struggling with the options in front of us, even with the adjustment where, you know, looking at onboarding over a 3-year period, 4.5 positions in addition to over $500,000 in consulting fees. And I mean, 4.5 positions is an ongoing expense that of course increases over time as our wages do. And you know, it's not completely clear to me that there is a point at which that we have certainty that you know, the additional what was originally a $5 million program is necessary in order to manage our asset management strategy in a way that's acceptable. I did find it helpful that the comparator that the consultant has referenced was District of Saanich, because I did go back and look at their asset management strategy and how that landed in their budget. And I could only see a parks asset manager and then kind of an organizational wide asset management person in their engineering department in their implementation plan. So I didn't see an impact for staff, although I recognize that they may just have more capacity or maybe further along in this process than we are, but their organization is also more than double the size. So, and the cost of implementation also was quite a bit less. But again, it's hard to compare apples to apples because I noticed in their strategy that they had a lot more clear data, which to me probably speaks to the fact that they are just further along in this process than we are. But what would really help me with this decision is understanding where some comparable organizations are in terms of staffing this need. And I still don't really, I feel like I'm, you know, searching around in the dark for it. I mean, I looked at Saanich in quite a bit of detail because, you know, they're referenced in the staff report and use the same consultant, but it would be helpful to know how similar organizations of our size are doing this. I did search in the Saanich directory, and they only have 2 positions that say asset manager or asset management, sorry, and we're looking at bringing on 4.5. So that was the only comparator I could find. It would be helpful to me to get some of that information before we proceed with like such a significant investment. I realize that there is a reduction that's being presented here, and I appreciate that that adaptation based on our earlier discussions, but I still don't feel that I have enough certainty in what the range of options are that I can feel confident in resourcing this type of investment in this program. So I just wanted to share those. I do have to leave in a couple minutes, so I wanted to jump in and share my thoughts before I go. Thanks.
Is there any way that, and obviously Saanich was one of the models that we looked at maybe comparing what the possibilities are for a model which more resembles theirs, or which of the 2 models you feel, I assume it's option 1, that most closely resembles Saanich. But let me get your light on.
Yeah, so I did reach out to the Saanich, and they actually partnership with the IC infrastructure. I think back to 2024, did a survey regarding the staffing level. And I think they served about, I can't remember exactly, but I think it's a 6 to 8 organization, but it's confidential, so I cannot really tell how large other organization is, whether it's comparable for CVRD here. So it's kind of like it's hard to compare. And it's also kind of labeled in their service report saying staffing level. It's there's no right or wrong level for the staffing, number of staffing for the asset management. So the level service areas are different, and the maturity of the AM program, AM maturity is different. And some of the organizations are more advanced compared where we are in CVRD right now. And organization, the org chart, the EM person may embed it in the operational team. So they may so obviously stand out in their org chart. So I also reached out to the manager in this Saanich. So I asked what kind of a delivery model or how many like staffing in your organization. So they do have AM corporate department, so 2 staff, which is aligned with Director McLean saying, but they also have operational staff embedded in their like engineer department and public service department. They're not necessarily having the AM specialist title, but they are the champions in that department. So there's no way like AM corporate department working by themselves to get all those like great work come out in front of the board. So it's kind of like a lot of optional team, and same with the IT. I know we also have a 1.5 FTE scheduled in 2027. That's more like an IT side or a GS side. So this Saanich, they have basically 2 people in their IT team supporting the AM project. I think start from 2024. So what they did, like the status report, I just borrowed from their website. They use their Power BI tools. So their internal IT person are supporting or working very closely with their AM departments to working on this initiative. So like all I want to say is so if we talk with those local governments, it will be really hard to isolate how many FTEs in your organization are really working on the AM on daily basis. So it's easy for like a corporate AM with a title, but it's hard to qualify the time or quantify the time at the operational level.
Okay, thanks. I'll when you ask the second question, I know you're leaving in a minute. But,
questions, just a follow up. Yeah, I mean, I recognize that. I guess the challenge for me is looking at when they brought in an a formalized strategy similar to what we're aiming to do here. I didn't see an increase in the required staffing. And so, yeah, recognizing that some organizations are better resourced than others, but clearly their part of their strategy is to figure out what their existing resources are in terms of people and have them be, have that additional responsibility added as opposed to the answer to a new program is more staff. I guess that's kind of the tension that I'm having, is that how much of this could be added to our existing capacity and how much is required to bring on in order to make it happen. And that's the part that I'm struggling with, because it's hard to tease out. Thanks.
If I could just weigh in quickly, I also reached out to some of my regional district counterparts, and those that got back to me, there's a real range of asset management readiness as organizations, and some are from the very beginning of the journey. Others have been doing this for a longer time, so it is hard to compare exactly where we fit. What I'm confident about the recommendation here and the work that the committee has done, the team committee and the consultants prepared for us, is that these positions have a real focus and there is a real need. And we don't have space within existing work programs of our existing staff to a large degree to be able to take on these specialist type activities to support the corporate nature of the program, and also reaching to the department level operations to be collecting data, to be analyzing that data, and to be then presenting the information up through the decision makers to the committees and commissions. So I'm confident that the model we're presenting, I think, is our best recommendation to be able to set us up for success. And I'm also fairly confident that we might not be able to find another jurisdiction of the same size that would have an exact match in terms of resourcing to be able to demonstrate, because of that difference in readiness and difference in embedded positions and whatnot. So.
All right, thank you. And Director Arbor.
Yeah, thanks. I guess, I mean, it's just the, I get, what we're talking about here, I think is just the demonstration hasn't been made. And in the sense that the urgency, right? We say that we haven't had those positions in the last like 40 years that the regional district has been around, right? It's just and because we had in my political life an experience of bringing on an AM person, and that was a bust, there's a little bit of reticence. And so I'm thinking, what's the cost of onboarding one service for staff to show us that this is really working? And then 2 years later, you're bringing another person, and 2 years later, you bring in a person. But in the meantime, the board can see, and I know we've heard in the report, oh, there's efficiencies about, but that wasn't properly framed. I think I don't see necessarily efficiency. You're bringing a specialist who's going to work on a specific service to do a specific job. I don't know where the economies of scales are with having two people shoulder to shoulder doing 2 or 3 services. So for me, it's like, maybe we start, and maybe the upside of that is, instead of locking in 4 positions, the upside of that is maybe we find, oh, actually, we are able to do the Sanish model. This person is figuring their way out. They're able to collaborate with other teams, et cetera, et cetera. So, so I'm a little bit with Director McCollum that whereas the staff thinks the business case is super strong, it's still a huge jump into a realm that is pretty new to us, right? And so this is still jumping with both feet in, like, seriously.
All right, Director Brown, please go ahead.
Thanks. Following on that note, I know when we have had previous discussions, we've asked for both a reduction in scope or scale of implementation, but also a phased approach. And so I appreciate Director Arbor's suggestion. I'm not sure that doing one or what, I don't know what that exactly looks like, but I was hoping to see that sort of phased implementation to ease that tax increase as well as an option. And I'm not seeing that in this presentation. Is that possible for us to get more information on how we might go step by step or in some combination of like a tech person and a departmental escalation that way, and whether that would save us money or just ease it's just a huge staffing increase.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. And what we tried to present was that phased approach by looking at a reduced application in 2026 and then a reduced application or a follow-up application to that in subsequent years. We stopped short of transitioning or phasing this over a longer period of time and looking at one position in 26 and extending that over a longer period of time, because I think staff is acknowledging that the work that needs to be done to collect the data to be able to understand the condition of systems and then be able to start to prioritize. We feel that resource is needed. Those resources are needed to be able to collect that kind of data, to be able to collect that kind of information. So a longer transition or a greater phased approach would delay all of that data collection and analysis, and just what's the opposite of quicken? Slowen the pace. Yeah, it'll reduce the speed at which we're able to get to a more reasoned position with our asset management program for the services.
Yeah, I guess I'm curious. I wonder if I appreciate that clarification that it is actually phasing it in. And maybe we'll find that we don't actually need a specialist for each department. Maybe the people that go through the process with water and sewer are then able to move from those departments and allow existing staff to manage the system that's been set up to keep updating the asset management goals in that department. And then they move to the next department. And like, could that be an option? That these are not actually service specific specialists, or do they need to be service specific?
I think maybe Tina, can you speak to the nature of the positions within the water and sewer and rec and the other services that we have and that we're projecting would be delayed to a future phase, but the role, sort of that ongoing role, I suppose, of those asset management specialists?
Yeah, so if I can bring the slides back to here, you can see, so the branch AM office, so that's kind of the roles and responsibilities those branch AM person will take on. So what they're going to do is they're going to develop the annual works plan, and they also will kind of leading the asset management plan. And what else? And they will maintain the asset inventory, risk, and criticality modeling, and lead the development of the workflows and procedures development. So as you may know, like a lot of our procedures, we have a lot of really good like long-term serve employees. So a lot of knowledge are just kept in their brain or on the PDF. We don't have a lot of document procedures. So this person will really have will really kind of helping us to develop those workflows and document all those procedures. At the same time, you know, we don't really have kind of a structured annual works plan yet. So basically people are very, like staff are very kind of reactive instead of a proactive right now. So this, with this person's onboarding, not this person, like 2 branch AM person's onboarding, will helping us to develop like annual works plan. So they won't know exactly what's going to happen this year, and then helping to really detailing what they need to do in this month or this week. Yeah, so those are kind of the key responsibilities we list there, just to make some clarification.
And Mark, you certainly are part of the asset management committee, and being GM of engineering services, you're very connected in with the work of both water and sewer and solid waste to a degree. Maybe you can weigh in a little bit on that that body of work that we see for those two departments.
Thanks, James. Through the CAO and through the chair, when we presented to the Water Committee and the Sewage Commission, Chris presented some information to show that, you know, currently the way that we're managing maintenance is the lead operator and the lead hand are heavily involved in all of the work planning and all those administrative tasks, and are not able to do some of their duties around safety and quality control and managing the work in the field. And so these two positions, the one embedded in water and sewer, the one embedded in recreation, they will initially be implementing, working with the asset management manager and Tina's team closely to develop and implement the program, and then be continuing to work on an ongoing basis at all of the annual and weekly and daily work planning. So based on the asset management program and all the data coming at them in terms of which pieces of equipment have the highest priority and highest criticality, and they develop the planned work, they implement that, they work with the crew to then implement that work, and the lead operator and senior operator are now have the time and the capacity to take on those other duties that they just can't get to right now. So that was the kind of rationale provided, and that's why those positions are ongoing, and that's why it's not easy to just, once they're kind of done with the implementation in the first 2 years, to take them and put them somewhere else. So that's the plan that we're trying to implement.
All right, thanks, Mark. And I'll go to Director Hillian.
Thanks, Chair. I have a couple of thoughts. First of all, I did ask when this was last on our agenda, if we had the actual skills within existing staff to take on the tasks that are required. And my recollection is that the answer to that was no, that it wasn't just a matter of capacity, it was also a matter of skill set. Correct me if I'm wrong on that. I also recall, well, first of all, I asked the question earlier on tonight when we were taking on a program with another 7 weeks of work, did we have the capacity to absorb that into existing roles? And the answer in that occasion was yes. But I'm also mindful of a guy that I used to work with when inevitably we would get asked to take on additional tasks, and his response was always, what do you want me to stop doing that I'm doing now? We hire professional staff and we pay them well. And they've brought these recommendations forward saying what we need to effectively manage the multi-million-dollar assets that we're the stewards of. My inclination is to support the recommendation. It's been pared back from what it originally was. We're talking about 2 positions this year, and with an opportunity to review it, and then another position in 2 years' time. So, I think that there's a question of do we trust our staff to research these things, to give us accurate information about what we need, and to understand the challenge with coming up with new resources in difficult times. I have to accept that it wouldn't be recommended if it wasn't crucial to our ongoing success as an organization with, as I said, the multi-million-dollar assets that we are stewards of. So that's my inclination. Thanks.
Yes, one piece there as well. The board obviously sets the budget annually, and so we're proposing here in the recommendation that the 2 positions in 26 and one then 2 years later in 28. But of course, the board will be adopting the budget annually, and we'll be looking at staffing each and every year. And so as we look to implement the program, we will be reporting back, and we will be talking about the effectiveness, and that may then result in changes around future resources as we go along.
Thanks, James. And I'll go to Director Morin.
Great, thank you, Chair. Yeah, I mean, excuse me, this has been a tough one, evident in us asking for it to come back. It's a large expenditure for sure, and I've been grappling with it as well. But a couple things stood out for me. I'm inclined to agree with Director Hillian on many of his points, but in the report where it talks about the risk, one of the risks being increased risk of implementation fatigue, and then coupled with that, our CAO's comments around, a longer phase in, excuse me, I'm having a real tickle in my throat today, And not being able to see the results of the work quick enough. And so then what can happen is then the board comes back and they're like, what's going on? We spent this money and we're not seeing any results, when we may have seen quicker results if we put in the resources in the beginning. So I'm inclined to be supportive of option one. And as also was just mentioned, we do have the discretion, or whoever the next board is has the discretion to take a look at it in future years. But I'd rather not drag it on. I'd like to see, this work start to get done. I also think, we're only looking at water, wastewater, and rec. And, those are vital. Those are our vital, well, water and wastewater for sure. And rec, of course, we've got a lot of facilities and a lot of infrastructure there. So I think that we are really focusing in on the priority areas, and yeah, I think there's risk in not going ahead. We're already scaling back from the original proposal. We want to take care of our assets, as has already been mentioned. So that's the way I'm leaning. Thank you.
All right, thanks. And before I go back to Director Brown, I just had a comment I was going to make. There's an org chart in the engineering report, and this is an excerpt from it. These are the operational levels of asset management, and then above that there was the board, which makes sense, and then the CAO, and there's someone called an executive sponsor, and then there's an asset management steering committee. So a total of 4 layers that sit above what we're seeing here, and I just have concerns about that taking time away from other senior level staff who are doing, we're also like how much capacity one can borrow from people, or what there's, and I guess I also just want clarity on what the executive sponsor would be, and if that's a role that we currently have, and who would play that role, and perhaps why it would be that extra layer would be necessary.
Tina, correct me if I'm wrong, the executive sponsors in this case would be Mark and Lucy as members of the executive team, and they're both on the asset management steering committee.
And so it would be in addition to Mark and Lucy's workload, but when it seems like a manageable addition to the person in that role. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think it's critical that we are the sponsors, and in the past year and a half or so, that has been our role, is to sponsor asset management, to support Tina and her team in the development of the policy and the strategy, make sure that it's a document that's supported through, by the rest of the organization. So yeah, I think it is part of our role, and we have the capacity for it.
And could I just ask the asset management steering committee? I'd assume that would be more, who would be in that role, and what function would they play?
So in the steering committee, we have 11 voting members. We also have some non-voting members, which is the supporting staff from like different departments. So we including managers and senior managers whose departments have most assets being involved. And from the capacity or from the workload perspective, so asset management steering committee hosting a quarterly meeting, and then I prepare the agendas, and then people will kind of like, attend and then asking questions, or we brainstorm or collaborate on the items. And we also, like below the assets management steering committee, we also have a sub working group, just to making sure we're not like, kind of like put too much heavy workload in front of the executive director, executive sponsors or the assets management steering committees. So we're kind of trying our best to separate the workload as much as we can. For example, Mark was not involved in the technology working group. We're kind of just recognizing maybe too much to involving 2 executive directors in all kinds of a working group. Yeah, so all I want to say is, staff are trying our best to managing the workload and try not to overwhelming at the executive levels and also the manager levels. Mm-hmm.
Okay, thanks for providing that clarity. I'll go to Director Brown then.
Thanks. I just wanted to follow up on I just want to make sure my comments are taken in the context that I mean them. And I mean no disrespect to our staff, and I know we hire very qualified staff, and I appreciate the work that's gone into this. So not to take away from that at all. And I also fully understand the importance of asset management. We just saw in the city of Calgary, a complete disaster with their water main breaking. And I come from a village that is also struggling to implement asset management. So I fully understand that. I also understand the position our taxpayers are in and our residents are in right now. And I think it's also our duty to make sure that we are really critically looking at, it's really hard to hire staff and then go, oh, we can't afford you anymore. So I don't want to be doing that. And I also don't want to, I just think it's our due diligence to make sure that we're looking at this critically, this kind of increase. So I just wanted to put that context in place. And I appreciate the continued thoughtfulness that is coming forward in these reports, and that you're actually hearing our feedback and presenting us with options.
Okay, Director Morin, go ahead, please.
Thanks, Chair. I do want to ask about the consultants piece, though. I forgot to mention that in my comments. Can you say a little bit more about that? Because I think that's another concern that has been brought up, that the consultants' fees are, pretty substantial in 26 and 27, and amount to, over the course of, what is it here? Like over $1 million over the course of those 4 years. So is there any way that we can scale back on, we go with option one, and how do we, I guess, how do we sell that we're spending that we would be spending that kind of money on consultants? Thanks.
So in the consulting fees right now, majority of them are actually belongs to condition assessment, which is require a highly expertise in that area. Unfortunately, we don't really have or expertise or capacities in our current staff level to handling all those kind of works. So those are kind of a major cost that we included in the consulting. We already try our best from like October to now, talk with the departments to decreasing the consulting fees as much as we can. So this is our best efforts in front of everybody right now.
So sorry, Director Moore, and I can just build off of what Tina said. Because when you see consulting fees, you might think a consultant sitting in their office in Vancouver, preparing a report and delivering it to us, and then we do something with it. But it's not, most of the work is not that type of consulting. It is hiring a consultant / contractor to go into the field to do condition assessments on the infrastructure. And we can do condition assessments on a lot of our infrastructure that is available to us, like in the treatment plants, some of which is in the rec center. But the underground infrastructure is all pretty much invisible to us. And so there are pipe eye technologies and ground penetrating radar technologies that can be used to get information about the condition of your infrastructure. And that's, that's where we need to start. So there's a lot of heavy lifting to do there at the front end. And that's why you see those consulting fees pretty heavy in the first few years, and then they do drop off. And it's more like just maintaining that data over time.
Thank you. You're refreshing my memory now on previously having this conversation. So thanks. I appreciate that. So yeah, I think that's it. Thank you.
All right. So we're currently on receipt. We'll dispense with that. Is anyone opposed to receipt? And that carries. Okay. Recommendation 1 is being moved and seconded. Any comments on the recommendation? All right. Anyone opposed to the recommendation? Arbor opposed. Okay. All right. Thanks very much. And we move on to ESC January 12th. Those are minutes. Minutes for the 12th. Anyone opposed? It carries. Sewage minutes for the 13th. Any questions? Anyone opposed? Rec committee for the 13th. Okay, any questions? Anyone opposed? Carries. Now, bylaws and recommendations. This is Comox Valley Exhibition Grounds Fees and Charges Bylaw, final adoption. And thank you. Anyone opposed? And that carries, and we'll now move in camera. We'll start off with our just closed meeting and then move to the restricted closed after that.